events. You'll see everything there. And today we're talking to John Irwin of Leyton about the federal budget. What's going on, John?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So just a disclaimer, guys, there was, obviously you may or may not have heard, the federal budget came out maybe a month ago now, maybe just over, 600-page report. All I've done and all we've done is we've taken highlights from that report. So as far as the next steps for when is it going to be available, what more details, that we don't know. All I know is kind of what was in the budget itself. So I'm more than happy to field any questions, but just so you guys know, and not trying to discourage any questions, but I may have a lot of I don't knows, just because this is strictly from the federal budget that was released. There's no additional insights, but it's nice to have a nice kind of focus in on innovation and specific industries and things like that might be relevant to the people who are a part of this today. So I'll jump right into it. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about a little bit about us. We're going to talk about the BDC funding, IRAP, SIF. We're going to talk specific life sciences. We're going to talk about agriculture. We're going to talk about intellectual property, manufacturing, superclusters, and working together as clients. So just a little bit about us. We have over 24,000 clients. We have over 32 offices. We're in 12 countries, over 20 years experience, and over 1,700 employees. 40% of those are female, so we're very proud of that. We opened up our Toronto office. We've been in Canada for 10 years. We opened up our Toronto office 2 years ago, and we're just growing exponentially. So this just gives you 10 plus years in Canada, 2 cities, 2 offices, over 90 employees, and over 700 clients here in Canada. So BDC first. So in the 2021 budget, it proposes to provide $2.6 billion on a cash basis over 4 years. So you're going to hear a lot of big numbers, but a lot of it, some of it will be spent over multiple years. So this just kind of gives you kind of a high level overview. So they're going to give it starting this year, 2021-22 fiscal. And just so you guys know, the government fiscal year starts in April. So all of the funding that is received when you say 2021-22, so that would be from now until March 31st. That would be their fiscal year. So April 1st to March 31st is their fiscal. So just to give you some highlighted points from the budget since 2018. Oh, by the way, BDC Bank, for those that don't know, they're the ones that really support entrepreneurs from a bank perspective. They're actually really good. Anyone that wants any introductions, they're mostly loans for the most part, but the interest rates are actually pretty reasonable. And we have a great working relationship with them. So anyone that is interested in any kind of working capital or loans or anything like that, more than happy to make any introductions. But since 2018, the government support of the women's entrepreneurship strategy is close to $5 billion. My question is, where is that money gone, to be honest with you? I've been looking at it over the last 2 years, and I haven't seen much money as it relates to women in entrepreneurship. So I'm curious where that money's gone. But 1.4 billion of that is lending through the Business Development Bank, and 2 billion is a facilitated trade through EDC, the Export Development Canada. So that's the Trade Commissioner, that's CanExport, different things like that. Moving forward, they will seek to support 19,000 direct women-owned businesses in 2024, an increase of nearly 7,000. So now that we have that insight, we're going to really be honing in to see if where that money is going, so that we can make sure that we're helping women-owned businesses as best as we can. The next one is through close collaboration between the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Association and BDC. An innovative, sustainable new $150 million fund has now been created. Don't know much more than that. The BDC will also be tasked with helping SMEs access zero interest repayable loans for the Canada Digital Adoption Program. So that's actually a really cool program to help companies get more into the digital age. Once, obviously, again, with all this stuff that I'm presenting, if there's any good stuff that comes up in the next few months, or whenever it does come up, we will certainly provide updates and things like that through our LinkedIn for the most part. So feel free to keep updated through that. So IRAP, the IRAP funding that came through in this budget is actually really promising. This funding is going to specifically help the smaller, medium-sized companies who are more diverse, if that makes sense. So the program will most directly benefit owners of technology-intensive, small and medium-sized enterprises, a majority of whom are well-paid and highly educated. Many of the jobs in these firms are related to science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, and women only represented 23% of the workforce in 2016. So what they're proposing in 2021 in this budget is $5 million over 5 years. So that's $100 million per year. But I know that sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's spread out throughout Canada. So IRAP all in every province for every ITA, right? So we're hoping that this $2,500 additional companies is going to is actually a decent number. What they're planning on doing, right, for this program, they're going to implement a preferential scoring system that will prioritize applicant firms that have met equity, diversity, and inclusion targets, or are actively working towards meeting them. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great initiative to help to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion in Canada's workforce. The program will also build on its work to provide support to women and Indigenous-led firms through agreements with not-for-profit organizations. So the one thing to note with IRAP is that what I'm anticipating for this 2,500 additional firms to work with $100 million, the max funding that they're going to be providing is between 50 to 100,000. And that's typically what we're seeing with IRAP with first-time applicants is a max of $100,000 in funding per year for the project. So don't think that you can apply. Now, you could apply and get 300,000, but because of all the COVID-related funding, and we talked about this in the last presentation, if you missed it, all the COVID-related specific funding, things like that, have really made them kind of claw back how much they give out to initial applicants. So SIF. Everyone loves to talk SIF, but it's very difficult to get. SIF is the Strategic Innovation Fund. If you look at this, if you go to the SIF website and you look at the companies that they've given monies to, it's the larger companies like Stelco, Magna, like it's larger companies. The reason being is because you need to have a project that spans 5 years that is minimum cost of $20 million for a project. But it's good to talk about if there are companies that are part of this conversation that have that project in mind. Again, you have to look to hire at least 80 employees over that 5 years. That's kind of a good metric to think about. But if you have something in mind, let's talk. It's just it's a very lengthy and difficult process to apply for, and you kind of want to be above that minimum 20 million to really be in the top. So budget 2021 proposes to provide SIF with an incremental 7.2 billion over 7 years on a cash basis, starting in 2021, and 511.4 million ongoing. And it's going to be directed as follows: 2.2 billion over 7 years and 511.4 million on an ongoing to support innovative projects across the economy, including in the life sciences, automotive, aerospace, and agriculture sectors. And then 5 billion over 7 years to increase funding to SIF's Net Zero Accelerator. So through the Net Zero Accelerator Fund, that would scale up its support for projects that will help decarbonize the heavy industry and support clean technologies and help meaningfully accelerate domestic greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2030. So it's going to build on SIF's existing resources, including the $3 billion over 5 years announced in December 2020. So with this additional support, SIF will target investments in important areas of future growth over the coming years to advance multiple strategic objectives for the Canadian economy. Additional funding will be directed like this. So broken down even more, $1.75 billion in support over 7 years will be specifically targeted towards aerospace for longer lasting impacts to this sector following COVID-19. This is in addition to the $250 million aerospace RRI initiative outlined in section 4.2, which we won't get into, providing a combined support of $2 billion. So for the aerospace sector, $1 billion of that support over 7 years is targeted towards Canada's life sciences and biomanufacturing sector, restoring capabilities that have been lost supporting the innovative Canadian firms and jobs in this sector. And then $8 billion, well, again, to the Net Zero Accelerator to support projects to help reduce Canada's greenhouse gas emissions by expediting decarbonization projects, scaling up clean technology, and accelerating Canada's industrial transformation. So what we're seeing with SIF is we're hoping that there's going to be a shift to other funding streams that are going to be more inclusive to the small, medium-sized kind of guys. But again, no real insights into that yet. But this is kind of what's been announced. So life sciences. So budget 2021 proposes to provide a total of $2.2 billion over 7 years. Now, just so you guys know, some of these funding announcements overlap with each other. So it's like if you're adding all this up, it's not going to add up because SIF, life sciences falls under, it's like some of this funding for the life sciences falls under SIF. So you see right here, there's the $1 billion from SIF to target life sciences. So of that $2.2 billion for life sciences, $1 billion is specific for SIF life sciences. And then you have the $500 million for IRAP. So they make it seem like it's a lot more money, but it's really just them announcing it for specific sectors and specific programs and different things like that. So, but there are some ones that I haven't talked about yet. So there's $92 million for AgMare Bio-Innovation. So that's Canada's global venture promoting the Canadian life sciences industry. So they're going to help to increase their portfolio and help with their Accelerator Quebec program. $250 million for CIHR, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, for trial funds. This is unclear. And $50 million to create a life sciences stream for the BCCI. We'll talk about BCCI. Startups and biotechs can all benefit from IRAP, SIF, SHRED, and CanExport. So we're hoping that startups will be able to go after SIF, but who knows? Once we know more, we'll let you know. In the agriculture space, there's essentially 4 key objectives: supporting farmers, supporting agriculture climate solutions, ensuring feed security in the north, and develop forest and wine sectors. So there were specific programs mentioned in the budget. Just so you know, there is one big one that those of you who are in the agriculture space may or may not know of. It used to be called Growing Forward or Growing Forward 2. It's now called CAP, the Canadian Agricultural Partnership. They usually open up 3 times a year as far as open for applications for their grants. They have not opened. They opened up once in the last 2 years, and they closed it very quickly because there's such high demand. So we're unsure. They should be opening, if it goes by the old timelines, they should be opening new streams either now or in June, but we're not sure what's happening. Neither do they. So we're not sure. But let's talk about other programs. So there's the Agricultural Clean Tech Program. In budget 2021, they've allocated $165 million to the program, with $10 million over the next 2 years toward powering farms with clean energy and moving off diesel. And the ACT program runs from April 1st to March 31st of 2021. So we're waiting on the new info for 2022, 2023. So the ACT program had funding that was allocated. Now they've got more funding, so we're hoping they're going to reopen. Again, agriculture climate solutions, that's another program. Phase 1 is open right now. So they have 185 million, 10-year program that will help develop and implement farming practices to tackle climate change. Granting, right now they're in phase 1, so their grant funding applications, proposals of grants up to $100,000. And then in fall of 2021, they're going to contribute funding applications, so funding in support of the $10 million starting in the spring of 2022. Funding in phase 1 will not be a requirement to apply for phase 2. So they're going to have a second intake of grant applications and contributing funding, and that will begin in spring of 2022 if you don't have enough time to apply by June 15th or the fall. And just so you know, I didn't dive into these programs, so I don't know much about them, but I've provided the links for you to go. I do know about this one, speaking of which, SDTC, Sustainable Development Technology Canada. This is specific funding for clean tech startups and scale-ups. So the average contribution, this is just ongoing funding that they've announced. But when we're talking about projects for SDTC, average contribution is between 2 and 5 million, up to 10 million. The projects must be 5 years or less, and it's a continual cycle of applications. The one thing to note is they're very specific about the criteria that is needed. So you must be able to showcase a reduction in greenhouse gas and quantify that reduction, like very specifically, very meticulously, in order for them to approve your application. We do have consultants that we work with from SDTC. We're more than happy to do any introductions. So intellectual property. So the government announced $90 million over 2 years, starting in 2022, to create Elevate IP, which is a program to help accelerators and incubators provide startups with access to expert IP services. There's no further information on Elevate IP available, but it sounds like what they're going to do is offer education supported by the government to train companies on how to maintain and apply for IP protection. There's $75 million to IRAP to provide high growth firms with access to IP resources, which is coherent with one of the qualifying criteria to receive IRAP, being that IP must remain in Canada. So what they're trying to do here is they're trying to help the companies who are receiving IRAP, who might be foreign owned, that they are keeping the IP that's being developed in Canada. So they're offering that help. So the direct investments would be complemented by a strategic intellectual property program review that will be launched. So all of this is new to IP and IP protection. There haven't really been any of these services. So this is really good. This is a really good initiative that's finally being implemented by the federal government. In the manufacturing sector, so again, back to SIF, the Net Zero Accelerator Funds, the $1.75 billion in support over 7 years for aerospace, and then specifically growing zero emission technology in manufacturing. So Budget 2021 proposes to reduce by 50% the general corporate and small business income tax rates for businesses that manufacture zero emissions technologies. So that's really cool. So if they are manufacturing zero emission technologies, they're hoping to reduce their income tax rates by 50%. The reductions would go into effect on January 1st, 2022, and gradually phased out starting January 1st, 2029, and eliminated by January 1st, 2032. Again, this could change if another government comes in and makes changes. So we can only look at this fiscal year kind of thing. Superclusters. So there are a few superclusters, and the links are here. For example, there is there's the Engine Supercluster, Manufacturing Supercluster. There's Scale AI. There's the Ocean Supercluster. there's a whole bunch of different superclusters that have specific funding programs. So what's new is that there's an additional 60 million over 2 years, starting this year, to the Innovation Superclusters Initiative. So originally it was launched in 2018 with 950 million over 5 years to promote large scale collaboration. So that's why it's called the supercluster. It's more large scale among industry leaders. So small to medium sized businesses, post-secondary education, that's what they're looking to for collaboration, to develop and scale high potential technologies in Canada. So here are the superclusters: digital tech, protein industries, advanced manufacturing, scale AI, and ocean. So each cluster has its own funds, programs, and processes. And they usually require membership, but it's not difficult to get. There is a pan-Canadian AI strategy, which I'm not too familiar on, just so you guys know, but it was announced in the budget. 443.8 million over 10 years, starting in 2021, but it's front loaded. So the largest portion over the 5 years right now of 185 million for commercialization of AI innovations and research. The focus is on talent attraction, retention, collaboration, training and advanced knowledge, and societal impacts, implications. So there is a startup and scale up program, which we can certainly look into a lot more. But it also may pave the way for pan-Canadian genomic strategy. So we're not sure what's going to happen. So that's just kind of very vague, but if you want more, there's a link there, and more than happy to explore any further with someone who thinks they might be eligible or want to go after it. More than happy to put in the time to do that. But this is, again, just a summary of the budget. That's pretty much it. As far as what was announced, key highlights for the, I guess, the innovation industry, if I can put that specifically. There might have been things that I missed. Again, it is a 600-page budget, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions if I can. Just quickly, how we work together. These are kind of our services that we offer. We offer the SR&ED tax credit, the e-business tax credit in Quebec, the digital media tax credit help. We help with grants and sales tax recovery. The one thing about us is you'll have one dedicated point of contact. So you'll probably speak to myself through here, and then I would hand you off to one of my consultants to kind of work directly with you for specific services. So each service line, you would have your own contact. It would just be one contact. So, the digital media tax credit would probably fall under grants or shred, but for the most part, it would be if you're doing grants and shred with us, it's typically 2 people. Because I have my grant manager, who's Ryan Lammers, amazing guy. And then we have specific shred consultants. So that's something we can work on. We work on contingency fee for the most part. So that's a success fee. You don't pay us until you get your money. Here's just an example of some of the industries that we cover, but we can work in pretty much any industry that is. So, I got to update that. I think it's now over 12 years shred experience. I think I'm in year 13 now. So I'm a software engineer. I have both software and hardware education. I've worked in a plethora of industries. I've pretty much done a shred claim in almost every industry that you can think of. And I did help launch the Toronto office. So that's it for me.
That's great, John. We've had a lot of questions here, and we'll get more.
Saw that lighting up.
Yeah, once we start answering some, people will be all over the map, I'm sure. So we might as well get started with some of these. The first one here is, where can I find updates about the ACTP program?
The ACTP program. I can look for a link. And I can, yeah, I can look for a link and I can provide it. Did I have it in here? Anyways, I'll so typically you'd have to go to the website.
Yeah, if you send it to me later, I'll send it, email everybody with the presentation and whatnot. The other thing was I said the presentation would be made available. I didn't ask you. Is that okay?
Oh, of course. Yes.
Okay, just making sure. I like to double check.
It's always, yeah, I always make them available because I know I put in links specifically for people to go and look it up. So
there's a couple of questions about women-based businesses here. What is the eligibility criteria for women in entrepreneurship program? Do you know?
I don't. So there are, and I can get, the reason being is because there hasn't, in the last 2 years, there hasn't really been any funding available. So there hasn't really been any focus on criteria because there's nothing really available to women entrepreneurs. There's going to be two separate types of criteria, one for anything outside of BDC and one for BDC. So once I get that criteria, I can certainly update you, Craig, and Craig can send it out to everyone.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is going to be any better. Looking for grants for women with community initiatives. Most of the stuff we talked about was technology based. Are there other types of grants out there other than technology?
Yeah. So if you're not for profit, there is a by FedDev. But I am told, because I do talk with FedDev on a regular basis, they are very oversubscribed. Their programs are very oversubscribed. So they have a community economic development and diversification fund, but you have to be not for profit in order to access that one.
So I had a previous question someone sent me before we started, so we're going to jump into that now.
Yeah.
Their company is called New Leaf, and it's based both in Canada and the Dominican Republic. And they're looking to establish a manufacturing recycling facility here in Toronto. The facility would create more job opportunities for Torontonians, as well as strengthen Canada's presence in sustainable clothing sector. So where does that fit?
That would fall under the green initiatives.
Okay.
So if they can quantify greenhouse reduction, then they might go after SDTC. But there are tons of other green initiatives. More than happy to have a conversation and get some more details and provide some sort of initiative. But what I'm going to do, for those of you that are looking for specific grants right now, I'm going to post this in the chat because this is a great way for you guys to kind of help me out as well. The link I just posted is you can go and set up a profile there. When you initially set up a profile, it's going to give you a list of potential grants that you might be eligible for. And if you find any that are of interest to you, email me or give me a call or whatever. And I'm more than happy to provide any insights for that. But what it'll also do is it'll update you once new grants become available as well. So so for the person asking about the green, about the recycling, I do have, her name's Fadia. I do have an expert in sustainability and green technology. She would have more insights into what would be available to you. And more than happy to make an introduction if that's something you want to pursue. One that I think we skipped over, and I just wanted to, someone was asking about CEBA, the Canadian Emergency Business Account. The application period has been extended until June 30th. That's something that we don't typically help with, just because we don't want to take away from the emergency funding that you need. But we're more than happy to provide any insights. But it's pretty straightforward to apply for it. But if you have any specific questions, more than happy. Actually, CEBA would be better to ask. They have a lot. They're really good at answering specific questions and kind of helping. So I would suggest calling them first, asking them. If you need any additional help, more than happy. But CEBA's pretty straightforward.
Was there an indication when we were talking about, IP, how much and what exactly they would really cover?
They're looking to provide about $90 million for the Elevate IP program and 75 to IRAP for IP specific things. But that is over 90 millions over 2 years, and the 75, I don't know over how long it is. But no, not sure what specific it is. So once we do know, once we have more insights, because this is totally new for them to kind of start up this kind of service. So the second that we have more information, and I'm sure a lot of your members, Craig, would be interested, we'll certainly put together something.
Great. Here's the next one. I have an IP in a medical device and started manufacturing in China. If I want to start a business in Canada, do I have to have business sales revenue proven first?
Not if you want to start a business in Canada. You can just apply for a business number and start your business. The one thing though that I would recommend is making sure that the business is primarily Canadian owned, so that you can take advantage of SHRED if you're doing development here in Canada, if you're planning on doing development here in Canada, and incorporate as soon as possible, because a lot of grant programs require you to be incorporated in Canada for at least 2 years before they'll give you any kind of funding.
All right, here we go. I want to learn how these programs work and how and where to get access. Who do I speak with? What are the requirements to meet, and how do I get my company ready for them? So making it eligible.
Yeah, great question. So I have provided links to some of them. Again, if you have any specific questions about specific grants, more than happy to have a separate conversation and talk to you about that. If you want to talk about eligibility, more than happy to set up a meeting and have a specific conversation about what you're doing, what you're planning on doing, and sort of what you're like, how we might be able to help. So the more information we can have, we know about your company, the better we can help. So Sebastian, what I would do is reach out to me either on LinkedIn or send me an email. I'll post my email here. But also set up a profile on that link I sent, and that'll give you an idea of what potential grants you might be eligible for as well.
That's great. You were talking about IRAP early on. They announced a bunch of new funding. It usually gets released in April and gets eaten up pretty quickly. Is this funding was released in April, or is it coming later? And is it for newer things, or is it the same stuff?
No, it's for newer things. So the federal budget, I think the federal budget was approved. So the funding could be available now. I haven't reached out to any ITAs. I've just been pretty busy, but you're more than happy. If you want to know before I get back to you, you can call the NRC number and ask them. They might be able to tell you. There's a 1-800 number. That's the way you have to get in touch with them anyway. But the new $100 million is new money. And it's specifically allocated to promote diversity and inclusion for Canadian companies. So they're going to be specifically looking at it's a scoring kind of criteria for eligibility. So the more checkbox you tick, the more likely you are to get the funding. So this is really good, because if you are diverse, inclusive, and all that stuff, and you're looking for IRAP funding. Now, just so you guys know, for IRAP, it's got to be it can't just be like developing an app. It's got to be kind of newer technology. For example, machine learning, AI, blockchain, all of the buzzwords. It can be in different industries. I'm just talking about IT since I'm a software engineer, but it's got to be developing new IP, if that makes sense. So you have to be resolving a problem similar to SHRED, and you have to have people on staff and things like that. So, but if you meet all that criteria, again, you have to be, in order to be eligible for IRAP, you have to be incorporated for at least 2 years, and they are looking to make sure that you do have some sort of revenue. But I don't know if that criteria yet falls under this new funding, if that same criteria applies. We haven't seen anything yet, but if you want, you can call NRC and they might be able to answer your questions.
And to be clear, the major differences between IRAP and SHRED is IRAP you apply before you spend the money, and SHRED you apply after.
Yes. Yeah. And so Sebastian just said that he did contact IRAP. Yeah, you got to be generating 300K in revenue. But that's the criteria for other fund, like for the regular funding. So we're gonna have to see if they've changed that criteria for this, or if all they've done is introduced a scoring methodology on top of the criteria. So that'll be something that as soon as I know, I'll let you guys know.
Can you talk a little bit about, your relationship with the BDC, and then, what type of companies they fund?
Yeah, so they fund a lot of technology companies. I've got a relationship with a few of their business development managers here in Toronto. Depending on the region you're in, they'll either pass you off as far as make an introduction to the person that's in your region. But for the most part, BDC it gives out loans, and they are like they tout as being devoted to entrepreneurs. So they offer venture capital, and the types of industries: aerospace, automotive, construction, fisheries, food and beverage, manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, technology, and tourism. They will. Like, they're not just gonna, like, if you come to them and say, hey, I need money for this, they're not just gonna say no. They're gonna work with you. So they've got different like they work as advisors. So if you have a small project and you need funds quickly, if you're looking for commercial real estate, working capital, if you need to purchase or transfer a business, if you need to buy equipment, if you need to buy technology, or you need some financing for your tech company, those are the types of things that they're going to help with. And I'll just post the link here. The one for the Fed for nonprofit. Yes, I can. Actually, I'm just going to add it for all of them. But I'll have the one highlighted. So here's FedDev. But the one thing to note is so if there are 3 programs, for these programs though, if there is one where it says not for profit or for profit, if you're a for profit company, it's a 0 interest repayable loan. It's not a grant. If you're not for profit, it's a grant, if that makes sense.
Sebastian likes to talk here a lot, and he was saying that he had much more luck with OCI and their innovation fund than BDC.
OCI is absolutely amazing to work with. They used to be called, for those who don't know, they used to be called OCE, and Ontario Centers of Excellence, and they are absolutely phenomenal to work with. The one problem is that a lot of their programs closed this year, and we haven't seen new programs come out. But Sebastian, more than happy to set up a meeting with you. Email me after this, and we'll set up a time that works probably next week, and have that discussion too. And anyone else for compliance to these for grants, and also compliance for SHRED. SHRED is the best program to go after if you're developing new technology in Canada, because you're entitled to that money. It's a tax credit, and if you're doing the work, you're entitled to that money. So if you have salaries, materials, or contractor costs, that is your best bet to get money. It's retroactive as well. So if you've missed the boat on a year end, we can go back and claim it. But it's the best one. But the reason being is because the grant landscape now, even more so during this COVID time, is very, very competitive. And so a lot of the programs are oversubscribed. So just if you have an opportunity to go after SHRED, but we're more than happy to talk about eligibility for any other grants as well.
Great. Just looking at all the stuff that came out, I'm just where there's a lot of information, and everybody's has the same idea, like Sebastian here in the chat room. He just keeps going. they want to get every dollar available for their company. Now, if I'm just trying to figure out what types of what things are available for my industry and I'm just starting my search, where would I start?
That link I posted, it's called the Business Benefits Finder. That is your best place to start. What it'll do is it'll immediately, once you fill in your profile, it'll immediately tell you what is currently available, and what is closed as well. I think it does tell you which ones are closed. Some of them aren't always updated, but that's going to give you an idea of what's currently available. It's not the most inclusive, but it does give you it's a good starting point for that. But it'll also set you up. So if you save your profile, it'll update you on any new grants that come out. So that's a good starting point. You can also just type in the industry that you're doing and grants and the province or Grants Canada, and it'll give you a list of things too. That's another way to do it. That's essentially, to be honest with you, when I have a company that comes to me and they tell me what they're doing and what province they're in, that's essentially what I do. I type it in a Google search and I go through, like I'll look at NSERC or I'll look at different government funding bodies and I'll go and do the search. That's essentially what I do.
And we talked recently about the digital media tax credit, and you mentioned it at the end. What types of people should be considering that?
Great question. Yeah. So I can only talk I'll talk specifically in Ontario, but for Canada, as a general rule, by the way, I just posted a link to the budget, the full budget, if you guys want to go through it yourself. But as far as the digital media tax credit, it's essentially for video game developers, and you don't have to be like an Ubisoft to be eligible. You can be a small shop with a few developers and apply for this tax credit. It's based on products, so if you're developing video games, it doesn't matter what type of video game, you can apply for this, as long as you have eligible expenditures. Also in Ontario, if you're developing educational interactive material for children under 12, then you can also claim the tax credit as well. So in each province has its own criteria as far as what's eligible, but as a overall, it's specifically for interactive kind of video games and like game applications on your phone and things like that.
Yeah, and it was one of the only ones I've heard of that do allow you to help pay for marketing and distribution.
Ooh. Yeah, it's a good point. In Ontario, they allow you up to $100,000 of marketing per product. So that's also distribution costs. So that could be shipping and handling and different things like that, packaging, different stuff like that. Marketing can include Google AdWords campaigns and Facebook AdWords campaigns and things like that. So it's the other thing too is you can also claim shred and digital media, but kind of separately. So whatever is not covered under shred, you can more than likely cover it under digital media, like illustrators and and graphic artists aren't eligible for shred, but you can claim them under digital media. So there's they're good complementary, but a lot of times shred does detract from the digital media tax credit. Shred is more lucrative than the digital media tax credit. In Ontario, at least, you can get maximum 40%. Whereas if you're claiming shred salaries in Ontario, you can get up to 64% of the shred salaries.
So you, when we were talking about the digital, oh, here we go. What's the turnaround time for the digital media tax credit?
Beverly she might have some insights. That's why she's asking that. So I would say before now, the turnaround time was a year to year and a half. I have seen, and please do not hold me to this, but I have seen applications get approved within 6 months now. So it looks like they finally got rid of the backlog. We haven't had too many claims recently, so we're hoping that that 6 months is a new norm, but you never know. So I would say between 6 months to a year.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like it's getting better than it.
Yeah, it was up to 2 years at one point. It was absolutely crazy. And once you got that certificate, though, it was a quicker turnaround once you applied for it subsequently. But getting to that certificate, yeah, took quite a while.
So let's talk about working with Leyton and how it would work. So
yeah.
Sebastian or Beverly or someone else here does some research, think they're ready to talk about a certain grant or tax credit. They email you, you have a meeting. What does Leyton charge? How does it work? If you want to enlighten us on that a little bit.
Yeah. So the way it works is you'd from like anyone who attended today, I'll more than likely set up a meeting with myself, and then once we've determined a program that you want to pursue that we can help you with, we'll send you an engagement letter for you to review. Once the terms are approved, we get it signed, and we'll get you started with, if it's SHRED, with one of my consultants, if it's grants, with Ryan's team as well. And then what our goal is, and the expertise that we bring, is to kind of alleviate the burden of putting together the application or putting together the SHRED claim. So we take a lot of the heavy lifting off of your hands, and then we put it all together. We submit it. Some of the times, if it's a grant, you have to submit it yourself because you're the taxpayer, but we'll obviously let you know about all of that, and we'll work with you. A lot of times it's just giving us access to the portal for us to do most of the work for you. Then you just make sure you submit it. And for SHRED, it's just about us putting together the claim with the financials and the technical, as well as and coordinating with your accountant to get that together. Once it's all filed, we'll try to track it for the SHRED portion of it. Once you get your money, that's when we'll send you the invoice for the grants. Once you get the money, or once you get the letter of funding, we'll send you the invoice, and then once you get the money, you can pay us, kind of thing. So for the most part, 90% of programs we can work on contingency, but if we can't, we certainly will let you know before we engage. And our hourly rate is about $3.50 an hour, and we can also do flat fee. But for the most part, most people like the contingency fee, or success fee.
Yeah, and it seems it's a percentage based.
Yeah, percentage based. Yeah.
And, Beverly must know a little bit about what's going on. As she said, is there any upcoming virtual conferences, concerts, anything tech wise?
Yeah. So I don't know if you're asking about anything upcoming or if that's what you're doing. So
I think she might be mentioning, what's going on tomorrow.
So tomorrow. Yeah, so I'll approach it both ways, unless you clarify for us, Beverly. But for tomorrow, we've got a Global Innovation Summit series. This is our second part of this series. I did post a link at the very start of the chat, so if you want to scroll up, you can go there. We've got some I'm just going to bring it up just so I can speak about it. But we've got some. We've got some events that are happening in Europe. So the thing with Europe is, the good thing is that they're happening later in the day. So if you want to attend, there's a space. Actually, I'm just going to share my screen so I can go through this. It makes it much easier. So there are so here are the 9 exclusive roundtables. There is Space, the Last Frontier, the evolution of the space market and how it's paving the future for humanity. We've got Sortie de crise, innovation ou trésorerie, faut-il choisir? That's one is in French, obviously. We've got making the UK a leader in green innovation post-Brexit and COVID. We've got one in Spanish, which I'm not going to try to pronounce since I don't speak Spanish. We've got innovation, harder, faster, stronger, greener. Then that's from the European side of things. Then we start our North American Summit, which starts at about 1:30 p.m. The North American Green keynote with Gartner. Then we have a panel on how to go green and stay innovative. We then have, that's actually a Canadian panel. Then we have an American panel with innovation trends in the dental industry. And then our final North American panel is how to accelerate digital innovation. That's from 5:15 to 6.
Sorry, I couldn't find the button there. We got Beverly's clarified a little bit. She was actually wondering about digital grants or credits. Are there any for virtual concerts? Her clients are musicians, and is there anything that's happening for the arts?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, there are grants for the arts. And if you go to OntarioCreates.ca, there's going to be some. But if you also type in Music Grants Canada or Music Grants Ontario, there'll be some other grants that are out there. I know there's some other funding bodies, but I've never really explored them too much. Like there's grants, there's a grant for pretty much anything. There's a grant for publishing a book or a magazine. There's different grants, but we haven't explored it because we haven't had the ask from our clients to do that. But yeah, go ahead and yeah, type it in and feel free to follow up with me if you have any questions.
So just in case they might give us another question there, but if people want to go and find out more, did you want to put where to contact you slide back up one more time?
Yeah.
And no, let us.
I don't want to put it up because it doesn't have, it has Canada@Leyton.com.
All right.
So I'm just going to I'll put my my email.
Fantastic.
My LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is somewhere in there as well. Where is it here? But yeah, the best way is honestly, I'm being inundated with messages because I've got someone using my LinkedIn to reach out to people. So the best way is send me an email. LinkedIn, I'm trying to stay on top of, but either works.
Yeah, send an email, get the information, make an appointment, and see what's available for you.
Yeah, that's my number 2. If you have any questions, I honestly my days are pretty jam packed, so calling me is probably the worst because you probably won't get a call back from me until later on in the day. But email is probably the best way.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to give us an update on what's available and answering all our questions about where we can find funding and all that kind of stuff. Any parting words for our audience?
No, just if you guys want to stay on top of things, your best bet is to go to the actual funding page yourself, or follow us on LinkedIn. We'll update you on specific grants and things like that, or reach out to me if you have any questions, or Craig.
Yeah, I'll connect you and whatnot. If people reach out to me, I'll send out the slides, the links, and the contact information in the morning. Thank you, everyone, for attending and all the great questions. Thanks again for the time, John.
Yeah, great questions. Thanks so much for organizing this, Craig. I appreciate it.